Your alternative talk radio contact, The Planet, KGRAradio.com.
With infinite complaisance, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
So on this edition of Into the Fray, I have on with me Peter Renn and Jason Hewlett, and they are of the Vancouver Paranormal Society. Now, you've heard me recently on Jason's show, From the Basement, and of course, Jason was on with me for episode 232 that is entitled Vancouver Paranormal. And now, between the two of these guys, they've got, 30 plus years, 35 plus years of paranormal research. And on episode 232, Jason and I discussed places like the Bailey House, Trunk Hill Sanitarium, and actually Jason's own interesting activity in his own home, literally in the basement. And we are here not only to discuss and welcome on, finally, Peter, who was supposed to be on with Jason and I last time, but he was under the weather. We're going to discuss some of Peter's own personal experiences and, of course, probably touch back on some of the places I just mentioned that I know that Peter was there with Jason, but they have a new project coming out, and it's titled We Want to Believe. Well, welcome on both of you, Jason, again, and Peter, welcome to ITF finally.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Shannon.
Absolutely. Yeah, Peter, Jason even told us of the story of him being called an effing prick, which was a very good story. It's something that I think that any decent ghost hunter would really look forward to, I would think, you know?
Yeah, no, totally. It's to get a response like that, it's phenomenal, especially that kind of response. They obviously know Jason very well.
That's right.
Hey, I mean, it's spades or spades, you know, Jason? I mean, you just got to own it, right, buddy?
That's right. Oh, totally.
The funny thing about it was when he was actually called that, he was called it twice. So the whoever that person was obviously meant it.
They really didn't pull any punches. You're like, okay, no. Jason's like, we get it. All right. We don't need 3 times the charm.
It's the Bailey House itself is a very it's very memorable. More recently than what it has been previously, because we've been investigating there probably on and off now for about 4 years since I moved to the interior, and it started off as a kind of little bit here. You know, you got the odd murmur of EVPs here and there. And it turned into a bit of a project, more of an experimentation for our equipment and stuff like that. And then I went away for a year. I moved up north and we came back down, and I met back up with Jason again. And then as soon as we headed back in there after a year, it just something opened up in there. It was just like the whole house started communicating with us. And to be honest with you, it's the amount of activity we've had in there is phenomenal. It's stuff that's it's a lot of personal experiences as well. Things like doors slamming and stuff like that. Things that obviously you can't throw that down as evidence to any client or anything like that. But it's personal experiences, and in the ideal selfish world, that's what we do it for. We do it for our own beliefs more than anything else, our own kind of accountability kind of thing.
Right. And, you know, Pete, I want everyone to get to know you. So I want to ask you, of course, about your background and how you got into all of this. But before we go to that, I have a quick question specifically about what you mentioned about you guys going in there and the activity has ramped up. Do you think that that's just because there happens to be now, you guys being living people going in there, or do you think it's your team specifically? Maybe, like Jason got his responses, and if another team went in there, do you think that they would have very similar experiences and that much activity, or is that just living people going back in the building again?
I think that's the $50,000 question, and I think that as an investigator, that's the question we ask ourselves as well. What causes that ramp in activity? If we knew that, I think we'd be halfway there in actually presenting how they're actually there, and why they're actually there as well.
Right. Well, yeah, Pete, give us some background. I mean, what got you interested in any of this paranormal goodness that we love so much?
I started investigating when I was 16. I had grown up. We grew up in an old heritage house, 17th century house, back in the UK, back in London, and we had a lot of personal experiences in that house. Like every morning, we saw a common occurrence of a white light. And it kind of got me curious. Even when I was a young age, I was like reading ghost stories and stuff like that. And then when I was 16, when I was doing my apprenticeship to be a plumber, we was up in London, and I come across it was a kind of show. I can't remember what the topic was. It was a kind of arts and crafts kind of show, and just totally out of nowhere, there was a stall there with a local paranormal group. I got chatting to them, and I bugged them. And eventually they brought me on board, even though I was 16, and these guys were old enough to be my grandfather at that time. And I started my ventures, and I was with them for about 3 or 4 years. And then I took that craft with me. I moved to Australia for a few years and investigated out there. Lived in New Zealand for a couple of years as well. Did some investigations out there as well, and then came back home for a few years, and then ended up in Canada. When I first arrived in Canada, I kind of didn't really. I kind of thought I'd pursue other things, and obviously, if you're a paranormal investigator, once it's in your blood, it's in your blood. You get the taste for it, that kind of thing. And before long, I applied for the Vancouver Paranormal Society. After about a month, the lady who was who was president of Vancouver Paranormal Society retired, and I then inherited the team. And then took about a few years to build it up, but we're now at about 20 plus investigators who are up and down BC.
Now, Peter, what about some experiences that were most memorable to you from Australia and or New Zealand?
I was probably the two places in Australia. One was an old ghost town in Victoria. There was me and a friend of mine. We was investigating an old post office in the ghost town, and we had access because it was actually his grandfather's. His grandfather actually owned the ghost town, so we were kind of messing around in going to a few of the places. There was no noted activity or anything like that, but we were both sitting in the post office, and my friend just turned around and said, "Can you make something move for us?" And just out of nowhere, the chair just basically glided across the room, and just sheer force, it basically smashed the side of a counter, and the chair just dismantled. So we got out of there pretty quick. We also as well we also investigated over on the west coast. There was a place there called Fremantle Prison. We investigated there for just over a month on and off when I lived on the west coast, and we was up in the hanging quarters, and they had the original rope there that they used to hang people, and just out of nowhere the rope just started swinging round like at sheer force. So we got out of there pretty quick as well. There was other bits and pieces as well out there, but it was it's quite a memorable place. There's a lot of history of negative history out there because of obviously the background of Australia and how it kind of got formed as a country as well. So there's a lot of places with that kind of activity there.
Now, how far did that chair move to be able to, actually smash into pieces?
It was probably about 10 feet because we was right by the door of the post office, and I turned around and walked away. I turned around and got up to walk, and then the chair just moved and just flew straight across the room within 10 feet and hit the counter where the serving counter used to be.
That's actually pretty remarkable, and I think that that's something that it probably, and it, when I asked you to bring up memorable things, and it's something that I was watching within episode 1. You guys were kind enough to send me some of that, and you both kind of remarked that, ghost hunting is a lot of sitting around and waiting, and it's not what a lot of times we see on TV, all the action and everyone's screaming and yelling and running around crazy. It's a lot of waiting around. So something like that, something moving 10 feet and then actually having enough force from whatever had moved it to smash it is very, very remarkable.
It's what drives having experiences like that, and it's probably hard to describe if any of your listeners are not investigators, but having that experience happen to you, it scares you, it'll scare anyone, but also at the same time it excites you at the same time in a weird kind of way. But things like that are very, very, very rare, and I mean I can probably count on one or maybe two hands the amount of experiences to that magnitude I've had over the past 27 years that I can't explain.
See, and that's the soundbite that anyone getting into ghost hunting needs to hear, right? I think that they watch the TV shows and they think they're just going to grab some gear and grab an adult diaper and they're going to have an experience wherever they go, and it's not true.
It doesn't happen like that, and I've been very fortunate with the places I've travelled to and the places I've investigated over the years, and a lot of I had this discussion the other day with a friend of mine in the UK, and a lot of the places that have that reputation of being haunted because of what's been painted by stories doesn't actually there isn't actually any activity there whatsoever once you get a credible investigator going in there.
Okay, now you mentioned that you were an apprentice as a plumber a long time ago when you first started. So, I mean, that kind of plays in perfectly to what you just said, because as a plumber, I mean, let's be honest, all the bangs and booms and things creaking and cracking and making weird sounds, that must aid you in you going in, especially to maybe a hotel or a private home and going, okay, well, let's look at the mundane explanations first before we start saying ghost.
That's one of the foundations of my team. Each one of us has different backgrounds. We've got nurses, we've got psychological nurses. Myself, I've been in construction now for 20 same amount of time as I've been investigating for now 27 years. I've had my own construction company. I work for the government now as building hospitals and stuff like that. So I'm pretty savvy when it comes to buildings and the fabrics of buildings, how things, why things creak and why pipes may bang and that kind of thing. And that is important more than anything else. If you're an investigator, you've got to be aware of the natural causes, because it's not always ghosts. It's not always the spirit of what's out there.
Now, besides something like the EVP, the effing prick EVPs, what are some of the more remarkable ones that you have either captured through recording or heard in real time?
Oh, blimey, that's put me on the spot.
Sorry. Welcome to ITF, sir.
Peter, we even got, remember the investigation we did for the first episode, we got stuff there.
Yeah, I mean, I've had anything. I've had full sentences. I've had my name being called. I've had investigators names being called as well, to the point of absolute clarity. There's no, you wouldn't mistake those noises, that actual noise that was produced. I've actually had, with my own ears, I've actually heard people's names being called, that kind of thing. Not just so much myself. I've had multiple witnesses witness the same thing as me. So yeah, and I've been sworn at. I'm not going to repeat what been said to me, but many foreign words have been said to me in the past as well.
Now, as far as your name being called, was that in direct response to something that would apply to that situation?
Yeah, it was a direct. A lot of the questions we ask when we're fishing for voices, or if we're fishing for an EVP or a response in any magnitude, most of our questions are intelligent questions. So we're driving for a specific response. We're not just driving for yes/no answers or anything like that. It's got to be something specific to that environment that we're in at that time, or specific to the history of the place as well.
Now, something that I saw within the episode, The Demon Jar, and I want to, of course, talk a little bit about that, is you mentioned the word exorcism. Now, have you seen or taken part in anything like that, Peter?
Not directly. I work for probably about 7-8 years. I work for an exorcist, an ordained exorcist down in Washington State. I'm a documenting investigator for him, and I do a lot of like Skype interviews, that kind of thing, with potential people with potential issues. Like I say, I've been doing it 7-8 years. I can probably, out of the amount of cases I've had, a lot of demons don't seem to be the latest fashion anymore, because I think because the TV's died down. But out of the amount of cases I've had over the years, I can probably say 2 of the cases required further analysis, if that makes sense, or further research into what was exactly going on. Most of it was just logical reasons.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, some kind of a psychological issue, mental illness, something like that, right? Like, that's always something, again, just like going into somebody's home, looking at the pipes versus actual ghost activity. I suppose it's the same.
Yeah.
And you were so right about demons. They were really a huge ghost fashion trend, was always the D word there for a long time.
Yeah.
And it does seem to be waning slightly, although they do get quite the bad rap a lot of times when it comes to some of these, especially in-home activity, because, you know, someone's living there and they're getting the shit scared out of them and X, Y, Z, and then they say it's demons. So besides the chair moving across the room, what are some of the, you mentioned, you know, you can count on you know, one hand or whatever. What are a couple of the other incidents that you've had happen, wherever that might be, that you'll just never forget?
I've seen full apparitions. The last one I probably can count on one hand. I'm probably about 4 to 5 times I've seen apparitions in some shape or form. The last one I saw was about 6 years ago in a residential case, and bearing in mind most of the memorable activity I've ever had come from residential cases rather than public buildings. We were basically investigating. It was the last investigation. We were due to be there, and the client was happy, and we just decided to go back just to check on her, and we decided to do a quick EVP session in there, and we were just packing up to go. And there was me, and there was 4 other members of the team all sitting on the couches. I was sitting on the floor directly by the kitchen door, or the kitchen entrance. There wasn't a door, so we got up. I turned around and looked in the kitchen, and all I could see was black. And I looked round at my co-investigator, who was right by the side of me, and she was probably about 2 or 3 steps back. And then she looked, and she just dropped everything on the floor, and her mouth dropped to the floor. And I looked round, and all I could see was black again. And I'm like, well, that doesn't seem right, because I automatically had a flashback in my head, and I was like, well, hang on a minute, it shouldn't be black in the kitchen, because there was a cooker right directly in front of me, so there was like a time up and stuff like that. But this black was blacker than black. If that doesn't make any sense at all, but it was blacker than black. So we took 2 steps. I took 2 steps back, and there was just this black mass in front of me that just outlined a huge human being. It had like the characteristics of a head and the body and stuff like that. So I kind of stood there. I was there for like 2 seconds, and I automatically, I didn't know what to do. My brain was going into overdrive, and I was like, I didn't really freeze as such. Well, I froze for a second, and the first thing that came into my head was walk towards it. So I walked through it, and it disappeared. And what's funny, I'm probably dragging this on more than anything else, but what's funny about a lot of people's experiences when it comes to ghosts and stuff like that, they always say that there's always a presence of, being cold, or some cases being hot and stuff like that. But when I walked through this shadow, or this black mass, I felt like a slight electrical charge go through my body. It was weird. Like, it was like walking through a massive energy. Like, I don't know, if you ever touched like doorbell wire or something like that, something with a slight, or got a electric shock off a battery where you got a slight belt off of it. That's kind of how my body felt when I walked through it.
Peter, I gotta say, I've been talking to people for ITF specifically, and reading and listening to podcasts much longer before that, but I've never heard anyone say they were like, "Screw it, I'm gonna walk through this shadow person." I mean, that's
you
pretty
know what?
amazing.
It wasn't me. It's not me being brave or anything. I'm the first one to jump up and react to any given situation. My brain just went into overdrive. First thing that my body decided to do. My brain wasn't even in the frame at the time. My brain just kind of went, "Oh my God, holy, what the hell is this?" My brain froze, but then my body took over, and it just decided that I wanted to walk through it. I didn't even talk to it or anything like that. It just basically, and the other two, the other guys that were sitting on the couch, they just said that as I walked through it, it was almost a cloud just disappeared. Wow. And then they could see the light in the kitchen.
But I mean, looking back, did you go, "Holy crap!" Like I'm surprised that I did that.
I couldn't sleep for about 2 nights after that. It just, even after been doing, that was about 5 or 6 years ago. Even after doing it for like 20 years, things like that. It's your body reaction, adrenaline's going to kick in and everything like that, and your body automatically goes into overdrive, regardlessly of how many years you've been doing it or how much experience you have of it. Yeah.
No, the blacker the black completely makes sense to me, and I'm sure many of my listeners. The only thing that I've ever seen with my own eyes is 4 shadow figures, and it was during the day and it was outside. And I won't bore my listeners with that story again, but that is exactly how I describe them, and I know how a lot of people describe what we basically call shadow figures. So, what about some of the other apparitions that you've seen with your own eyes, there, Pete?
Back in the UK, probably the most distinctive one was we did a lot of charity events for cancer research back in the UK, and a lot of what we did, we investigated castles, but we raised money at the same time as well for research and stuff like that. And that was kind of the only way we could get into places like that. It was before everyone decided to start up their own paranormal group and stuff like that, and before the whole world got overrun with groups. So my team was very unique, and I investigated Warwick Castle, which is an old part of England, one of the earlier parts. And I don't quite remember. I think the Warwick Castle, the original castle, dates back to the 9th century. And we was in the one of the main hallways in the castle, and I think it was about 3:00 in the morning. And there was me, and there was 2 other girls with me as well. And we witnessed a guy, and he wasn't dressed in any suits, night suits or anything like that. He wasn't dressed up in armor or anything like that. And he just looked like a guy by his face, but when he walked, it was kind of like a white cloud, like walking behind him. And then he turned around and he just walked through a door. That was probably one of the most memorable apparitions I've ever seen.
And did the 2 other investigators with you, they saw it as well?
They screamed.
And
And
you definitely
one
saw
ran
it.
out as well.
Well, that'll do it. Yeah. So, I mean, Warwick Castle. So, being from England, of course, that's a normal thing. Is you guys have castles, and here, especially in the States, we don't really have access to things like that. So it's so cool to hear stories from such old properties, such as that England houses. What other castles or any other super old structures that you've visited in England?
We did some fundraising at Leeds Castle as well, which is actually in Kent. It's not in actual Leeds itself. Dover Castle as well, which was very unique because it was Dover's on the south coast of England, and it was used also during the Second World War, and there's like bunkers there as well where it was used as like a home front guard in case Germany came over and invaded the UK. So there was there's lots of tunnels there and a lot of secret rooms as well that they opened up for us as well. So it was very cool to go and revisit places like that in history.
Any memorable things happen at those locations?
Just odd murmurs here and there. Nothing too distinctive. It's just it's a lot of the time it's just having the privilege to investigate places like that as well. It's like walking around in history.
Now, I have a question for you, and don't take it the wrong way, because I love talking to anybody that has a British accent. I mean, as we said in the very beginning, I am from England originally. Obviously, I do not have an accent. I wasn't there long enough. But do you think that being from England and having that fantastic accent gets you more activity when you're in, Canada, or, if you ever come out here in the States and they're like, oh, I'm going to talk to Peter because he's got that amazing accent?
We've often thought on a lot of the places we investigated, we've often thought potentially my voice could be used as a trigger object because of obviously the history in Canada of Britain and a lot of the places I visited in the States as well. There could be that kind of element of trigger, me being a trigger object, so triggering something that could happen. It's really hard to say because there isn't been a scenario where we've actually got like an EVP or we've got a response where there was a before where someone's gone in there and that got absolutely nothing to after, apart from the Bailey. Actually, going back to the Bailey House, there's the basement in the office area. Every time someone goes in there, they don't get anything. But when I go, every time I went in there, I always got, and I even got a name as well, an Irish woman called Mary.
Mm-hmm.
That came forward, and it just it was amazing. That was probably about the only time.
I was just wondering because poor Jason gets the, oh, you're an effing prick, and I was wondering if they would go, we'll bring the guy with a fantastic accent back in, No.
It never swore Peter at Bailey House, never once.
Well, yeah, let's now that we've gotten to know you a little bit, Peter, thank you so much. I'm sorry for kind of putting you in the chair and shining the spotlight on you, but so let's turn our attention here to something super exciting that you guys have coming out. Actually, I mean, you're going to be dropping some stuff when this airs, which of course we're talking today, Wednesday the 6th, but Thursday, May 7th, you're going to be dropping some stuff on some folks. And that is We Want to Believe. Let's talk a little bit about that massive project that you guys have been working on.
Yeah, it's been, Peter? I guess we had our first meeting about it like last April.
Yeah.
Really. And then we kind of put a team together to work on it, and that all fell apart. And we thought that was going to be it until we decided to attempt it as a podcast, which we did one episode, didn't we, Peter?
Yeah, we did. We did one episode, and then Jason kind of got his contacts on board, and then we got a lot of interest from the Joe Blow. You're probably going to jump in with name, drop a few names, Jason. But we got more interested in people like backing us on the project, and then we kind of went from there. But it was important for me because over the years I've had a lot of people offering me, potential TV slots and stuff like that. But it was important for me that we made this show to the way I wanted it, because I don't want. I don't want to tarnish my reputation of being, this guy that, he's a thrill seeker on TV, and he's kind of sold himself to TV and stuff like that. We had to do it in a specific way as a kind of documentary, rather than having that kind of, theaterized TV show like what you see on TV now.
When it worked out really well, because we were able to go in with this first episode and future ones that we put together when we're able to get out. But we taped the investigation as it is, and then we kind of have this wraparound stuff where we talk about it. And so all the footage you see from the investigation, we don't tweak it, we don't edit it, we don't put effects, there's no music added. The wraparound stuff we get to play around, because I have a filmmaking background, so kind of play a little more theatrical, but it doesn't interfere with what you're seeing in terms of the investigation. Like, we explain the history of a place, and we can put in some kind of images just to sort of make it a little interesting and have some music. And so it gives that, there's still the entertainment value, but it's heavy documentary style for the most part, and because we do want to present it in a way that is credible, and so many of those shows just seem to have lost that credibility by playing it up and Hollywoodizing it.
Yeah, and that's something that I know that we touched on last time, Jason, was, and not to mention any names, but you guys aren't going in there and hollering and cussing and trying to poke and prod at whatever, if anything, may be at a location. No,
because that's just, well, I don't think it's smart. You can attest to that, and it's disrespectful, and I think it hurts you if you're serious about paranormal investigation. You take it seriously. You don't want to play it up. You're respectful to the locations you're at and the history of it, and you just want to get good evidence. And doing that kind of thing I think gets in the way of that.
So let's talk more specifically about the location for We Want to Believe, and what may be coming up on a bigger scale for that. I know that this hotel like you say in the film, it's an undisclosed location because it is still open, but it has had quite a history to it, right?
Mm-hmm. And Peter, you probably know a bit more about that from when you were talking with the manager and the owner. But I know of the place too, and it has had a rough reputation in the past, and people had died there and committed suicide there, which could lead to some of the activity that we experienced. Peter?
Yeah, are you there, Peter?
Yes, sorry.
Oh no, that's okay. Sorry, yeah. I thought we lost you. I was like, no, Skype, no.
No, it is one of those buildings, and with a lot of background and it has an incredible amount of stories as well. And I just emphasize the word stories because a lot of the stories, we'd never be able to validate anyway, but it's just the nature of the actual hotel and the bar itself. It just screams a lot of energy, and a lot of things have gone on in there. And I think for our first show, I think we hit a gold mine on the first show. Mm-hmm. Hopefully we could we could move forward now on our next episode or our next project, which could be equally at the same amount of activity, but who knows?
Well, we kind of the way that we did it too, Shannon, is sort of this investigation at the hotel plays out over the first 4 episodes because they're 10-minute chunks, and so they'll come out once a month, and then by then we'll have been able to get out and go to the second location, which sounds really interesting, and we should be able to get another 3 or 4 out of them that way, because didn't want to just try to cram a whole day's worth of investigation into 10 minutes. It just you couldn't do it justice, and you would be tweaking it and cutting it, and I think it would hurt the evidence in the end and what we captured.
Now, the man that I saw in episode 1, the Demon Jar, he was in a black shirt with kind of like a white pattern on it. Was that the manager of the hotel?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was Peter, yeah.
And
and he had some good, interesting stories to tell. And the one bit that people do see in that first episode is we sort of had something happen while we were talking to him with another tenant in there.
I was going to ask about that. I had that written down. Let's speak about the screaming man next door.
That was an interesting moment we caught on camera because I don't think we could have ever timed that better.
Yeah, and explain as a kind of a teaser what was going on there, because it was so loud. Because you guys are talking to the manager in a separate room, and all of a sudden this man is just screaming at someone or something, and you can tell he's actually trying to communicate with something very fervently.
A lot of the obviously going back to what we said originally, the hotel, the rooms themselves in that hotel have had a lot of activity, and there's specific rooms. I think you don't. You can probably quote on this as well, Jason. That I think he mentioned about 3 or 4 rooms that was a kind of a haven of activity where there's been multiple stories of people coming in and out. Unfortunately, we had access to 2 of the rooms. But the one opposite to one of the rooms that we investigated, there was a guy that moved into that room, and there was someone that passed away in the room before, and there was multiple complaints to the manager of the place by this guy originally, and apparently this guy was very civilized and. And he approached him quite logically and said, there's a woman in my room and that kind of thing. And then it transpired that the guy, after a while, started interpreting it as demon. And at that particular day when we was up there, we were doing a walk through one of the bedrooms, one of the hotel rooms, and then he started shouting and screaming about telling this demon to go away. That was in his room.
Calling it a murderer and evil, and it's almost like he was trying to cast it out. It was
funny. Apparently the guy's in very good mind, but it started off as like a placid, a minor complaint about there was a woman that came into the room, but then all of a sudden it just flipped into something like he defined as a demon. And it was just terrorizing. And in your back of your mind, you're like, well, okay, if you're living in that room, wouldn't you ask to relocate to another room?
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
I would have been out of the first night.
Oh, yeah, I would. Yeah, definitely. But sometimes, you don't know the guy's circumstance or anything like that.
Right.
So we can't really judge on anything like that.
So did you ever actually talk to that gentleman?
No.
We weren't really allowed to mingle with the guests.
Right.
Like they're very, very. We're supposed to be there very low key.
Yeah.
And so we kept to places that were generally not in use. But during the tour, because there's the rooms that we could investigate, there was no one in, but we couldn't go into places where people were there.
It was the activity in there at the moment, and it was defined by me by the 2 partners that actually own the building. The whole subject of paranormal activity is a very sensitive subject in that building at the moment.
So if somebody had walked by, because you guys had, Jason, I think I saw you out in the hallway, and then the rest of you guys were actually in the room, so the doors open to the hallway. So if somebody had, if you had seen someone, would you have to try to put the cameras down and act like you were just, like la la la?
Yeah, we were pretty nonchalant about it. And people did pass us in the hallways. We just said hi. And we didn't really say anything.
How's it going? Nothing to see here.
Yeah, nothing going on. Just don't worry about it.
Nothing demony here. Just, no problem. Now, something else besides the screaming man is that you mentioned that Sarah, one of your fellow investigators, got a growl. So, and you mentioned the word demon, Peter. So is that what you guys are thinking then? That there is something darker and much different than just human spirits hanging around that place?
No.
No. It's a buzzword, I think, like we were saying earlier.
It totally is. And you know what? Despite my association with an exorcist, my own personal belief is that a demon is an interpretation by religion. If it is a demon as such, or what they define as demon, is just a negative spirit. A lot of growls and what I've gathered in the past, where I've actually kept growls like with my own ears, and then I've done a playback on an EVP. I've done a playback on my voice recorder. It's actually us actually capturing a voice on an EVP as an EVP. So it's that. I think personally, it's just the growl is just a voice just breaking through a frequency, trying to communicate with us. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily a growl of a demon, with big claws and stuff like that.
But the demon thing is so fun and scary and spooky, and We can't sleep for weeks if we think it's a demon. It's so fun.
I know.
Well, and I think that's where pop culture and, in some of these shows, because you were saying earlier, Shannon, it became the big buzzword on a lot of paranormal investigation shows. Everyone just wanted to jump on that. And I think even though it's not being used as much, I think it still lingers in culture and society, and religion still, obviously plays a part in that too, right?
Yeah.
Well, don't you think that from now on, everyone, as part of your ghost hunting kit, you bring a bar of soap, and anyone mentions the D word, you just shove that soap right in their mouth.
Exactly.
Well, my guys know, but the guys on my team, they know not to ever mention that word.
Especially with the client around.
Yeah. Oh, God. It's like that Batman meme where Robin's starting to sing Jingle Bells, and he's about to just smack him. That's what you got to do, right? So
yeah.
Yeah, especially with the clients around, especially when they freaking live there. Yeah.
Definitely.
Like, oh no, let's just bust out the pentagrams and Ouija boards. Let's just really screw with these people, huh?
Yeah. The crosses and all that.
Oh my goodness me.
I've done a lot of research on not so much demonology and stuff like that, because everyone claims to be a demonologist as well. I've done a lot of research on the correlation between demonic symbols and religion and stuff like that, and there's a lot of cross referencing with things that are supposed to be demonic with actual symbols of other religions apart from the Catholic or Christian faith, such as pagans and Wiccan, that kind of thing.
I mean, a lot of people and their practices, it is misconstrued in a lot of ways, and absolutely 100% the demon word is overused, and it's so tired. And I'm sure the demons themselves are like, look, we don't have all that time to be going out and visiting you guys. Calm down. It's not us, man.
We got stuff to do.
Yeah, we got demon-y stuff to do. God, calm down. Blaming them for everything. Well, let everybody know when and where they can see We Want to Believe. When is that starting?
Well, it'll drop depending. Like, it comes out at 9 a.m. Pacific time on May 7th. Noon Eastern. Can be found at Joe Blow Horror Videos. So from joeblow.com, and it's produced by John Fallon, who runs Arrow in the Head, and then Barrett Garabini, who's he's the executive producer, and he's Joe Blow himself. They've been doing this for 20 plus years, one of the biggest movie network sites in the world. And it's pretty cool stuff. And we'll also, of course, have it on our Facebook page. We Want to Believe the series. And we'll put a link up at WeCameFromTheBasement.com as well.
And the Vancouver Paranormal Society Facebook page as well.
Yes.
Don't forget to plug us on that as well, Jay.
Can't do that. Cannot forget to plug with our group, your group.
Yeah.
The group we're with.
Yeah. Vancouver Paranormal Society on Facebook. I'll make sure to link that. Now, Joe Blow is JOBLO.com, right?
Yep.
Don't actually spell it out. Okay, perfect. And that will be linked in show notes as well. Anything else that you guys need to make sure people, places to find you, anything like that?
That should be more than cover it. And I went and Googled, We Want to Believe Joe Blow, and it came up. The trailer that came out the other day came right up right away. So, yeah.
Peter, when are you going to write a book, man?
Yeah.
It's on my to-do list. I've got my life's been very interesting. Jay can probably testify to that.
Yes, it has.
One day when I get 5 minutes. One day if I decide I want to pursue something less hectic than working for the government.
Yeah. Yeah, don't work too hard. It sounds like you're everyone else is sitting at home going, I'm so bored, and you're like, I don't have that problem.
No, I'm actually working from home at the moment. I'm going back to Kamloops next week, but it's just been it's been a roller coaster over the last couple of months, that's for sure.
Well, will you guys come back on when in episode 1 through 4 is this hotel that we just spoke about, right? And then starting at episode 5 is a new location, correct?
Yes, which we're hoping, Peter, I think we're trying to get out there within the next 3 weeks once we're just sort of allowed to, restrictions are loosened just a little bit more here in BC.
Yeah.
We've got 2 more lined up for sure, and then a possible third. So
Awesome.
Yeah, we've got we're kind of thinking about doing one at the Bailey House. We've got open doors there, so we've got that as an option, and there's other places as well in the interior region, and there's one in Vancouver as well that we can go and visit. So we've got enough at the moment to keep us going for probably a year.
Yeah, easily a year, and then which the episodes, if they continue once a month, will run even beyond that, just because of timing and, like you say, Shannon, everyone's working too, and editing these. It takes to edit the first episode took a good month, really. I think from start to finish to get it down pat the way we liked it.
Well, hey, I told Jason that there is a huge difference between audio editing and video editing, and I've tried my hand at it, of course. There's several Insider episodes that I edited myself when I went to Fox Hollow Farm. And I can honestly say there is nearly nothing more frustrating than video editing. So,
oh, yes.
I mean,
editor, so.
Props to you guys, big time. And Jason, if you're going to go back to the Bailey house, if you want to get cussed at, you can just call me. I'll cuss at you, no problem. I mean, I'm always here for you.
Don't worry about that. I'm English. I can throw a few.
There you go. Well. That's right. But it sounds so much nicer coming from you, really, Peter. Let's be honest. Well, guys, you're welcome back on once episode 5 hits. We've got a new location to talk about. Come back on ITF anytime.
We will do that. Thanks so much, Shannon.
Well, I'm so-and-so. I was given this name by my parents. I've been to such and such a college. I've done these things in my profession. I produce a little fire. Buddha says, forget it. That's not true. That's some story. That's all gone. That's all past. I want to see the real you are now. Well, nobody knows who that is. Because we don't know ourselves except through listening to our echoes and consulting our memories. But then there's a real you, and that again leads us back to this question. Who are you? That is the real you. We shall see how they play with this exam by the cohorts to get you to come out of your shell and find out who you really are. says, when you settle down in the train to read your newspaper and so on, you are not the same person who a little while ago left the platform. If you think you are linking your moments up in a chain. And this is what binds you to the wheel of birth and death. But when you know that every moment in which you are is the only moment, this comes into Zen. A master will say to somebody, "Now get up and walk across the room." And he comes back and he says, "Where are your footprints?" They've gone. So where are you? Who are you? When we are asked who we are, we usually give a kind of recitation of a history.